welcome the anointed ones. A lie has speed, but the truth has endurance. Let that sink in for a moment, because right now, you're about to see the endurance of truth play out in real time. They thought they could sprint ahead with their lies about you, running from one ear to another, painting you as something you never were. But here's the catch. Lies always need maintenance, while truth maintains itself. And maintenance is exhausting. Do you know that psychologists have proven it takes more mental energy to sustain a lie than to tell the truth? That's why liars eventually burn out, trip up, or contradict themselves. Their own circle has finally caught on. They've realized that if someone could go to war against the most innocent one among them, then no one in that circle is truly safe. And suddenly, the wolf they once clapped for now looks a little too hungry for comfort. What makes this even more ironic is how they bragged about exposing you. Yet now it's their own contradictions, their own bitterness, and their own twisted stories that are being exposed. Right in front of the same crowd they rallied against you. It's like watching someone set a house on fire to hurt you, but then realizing too late they were still standing inside the house. And let's be real, life has a sense of humor. Isn't it funny how the very mouths that once repeated their lies are now whispering against them? The circle that laughed when your name was dragged is now giving side eyes at the liar, wondering, wait a second, what else have they been lying about? This is where the tables turn, and they don't just turn gently. They flip violently. Because when you attack the innocent, the universe has a way of making sure your own circle becomes your undoing. Today, we're diving into the raw truth of why their lies didn't just backfire. They're boomeranging, hitting harder than they ever expected. And trust me, this unraveling is about to get delicious. Number 1. Lies breed suspicion, not loyalty. Lies breed suspicion, not loyalty. And that's exactly why the person who lied on you is now watching their own circle turn cold. At first, their words might have sounded convincing. They probably delivered the lie with confidence, maybe even a fake tear or a well-rehearsed story. People listened, nodded, and some even believed them. But belief doesn't equal trust. Belief is temporary, trust is built over time, and lies, by their very nature, have no foundation to stand on. The tricky thing about lying is that it creates a permanent shadow. Once someone proves they are willing to distort the truth about one person, the thought automatically enters the mind of everyone else around them. Could they do the same to me? That seed of doubt is poison. It doesn't grow into loyalty, it grows into suspicion. Even the people who supported the lie in the beginning are quietly calculating the risk of standing too close to someone who uses dishonesty as a weapon. And here's the raw truth. When someone lies, they might think they're controlling the narrative, but what they're really doing is broadcasting a warning label about themselves. Their circle might not call them out openly, but behind closed doors they're watching. They're taking mental notes of every inconsistency, every exaggerated detail, every time the story changes. Loyalty starts to crumble not because the circle suddenly loves you, but because they stop trusting them. Nobody wants to stand behind someone who could eventually stab them with the same blade. The lie they told about you may have had a loud beginning, but the ending is never as glamorous. People begin to compare the lie with reality. They see your actions, your character, your consistency, and it doesn't match the picture that was painted. And when the puzzle pieces don't fit, the fingers point back to the one who created the false image. That's when the circle starts whispering, doubting, questioning. The liar who once appeared powerful suddenly looks dangerous, unstable, and unreliable. That's the moment where loyalty dies, because loyalty requires safety, and there's no safety in someone who can destroy reputations for sport. Their circle is turning because they've realized the obvious. If they could lie so boldly about the innocent, then no one is truly exempt from being the next target. In the end, their lies didn't build an empire. They built suspicion. And suspicion always tears the house down. Number 2, attacking innocence exposes hidden darkness. Attacking innocence always exposes hidden darkness, and that's why their own circle is now unsettled. When someone lies about a person who is genuinely blameless, it does more than smear the target. It reveals the corruption in the liar's own heart. Innocence has a strange power. It doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to fight back. It just stands there as proof of purity. And that purity acts like a spotlight, making the malice of the attacker painfully obvious. The harder they came after you, the clearer it became to everyone else that the issue was never you. It was something broken inside them. The truth is, most people can tolerate flaws, mistakes, or even weakness in others. But what they can't tolerate is seeing cruelty directed at someone who hasn't done anything to deserve it. There's an unspoken law built into human nature. Injustice creates discomfort. Their circle may have laughed at first or nodded in agreement when the lies were being spread, but over time that laughter turned sour. Deep down, something in them whispered, "This doesn't feel right." That's the pull of conscience, and it doesn't let go easily. By attacking you, they expose their jealousy, their bitterness, and their insecurity to the very people they thought they had on their side. The circle begins to recognize that the energy isn't just about you, it's about how this person operates in life. They saw the venom, the exaggeration, the desperate need to tear someone down, and it made them question what else is lurking in that person's spirit. That kind of darkness doesn't stay contained. It eventually spills over into every relationship. The irony is that their plan was to make you look small, but instead, they made their own ugliness undeniable. Innocence doesn't weaken under attack. It becomes magnified. While they were busy painting you as the villain, their own actions became the real story. Their circle is now uncomfortable around them because what once looked like strength is now exposed as cruelty. And cruelty, when seen clearly, is never respected. It's feared, avoided, and eventually rejected. In the end, their attempt to attack you turned into a mirror for everyone around them. Their circle is now staring at that reflection and realizing the ugly truth. The one who targeted the innocent is the one who can't be trusted. Their darkness is no longer hidden. It's the only thing people see. Number 3. Lies don't age well. Lies don't age well, and that's the very reason their story about you is collapsing in front of their own circle. In the beginning, a lie can look convincing. It's shiny, dramatic, and attention-grabbing, so people latch onto it. But as time passes, reality has a way of exposing cracks. The problem with lying is that it requires constant updates, constant maintenance, and constant performance to keep it believable. And no matter how skilled someone thinks they are, it's impossible to keep every detail straight forever. Eventually, the truth starts leaking through, and the lie begins to rot. What makes this even more damaging for them is that time has worked in your favor. While they were wasting energy holding their story together, your consistency has been quietly proving them wrong. Lies may travel fast at first, but they don't have endurance. People start noticing that your character hasn't shifted. Your actions don't match what was said, and your spirit doesn't reflect the ugliness you were accused of. That creates a problem for the liar, because the longer time passes, the harder it is to justify why their story isn't lining up with what others are seeing, and their circle notices. People aren't as blind as liars hope they are. When someone keeps dragging the same name but reality doesn't match, suspicion grows. They begin to replay conversations in their head. They remember the details that didn't add up. They recognize how the tone was always bitter, always exaggerated, always leaning more on emotion than fact. And once the questions start forming, it's only a matter of time before loyalty begins to dissolve. The truth about lies is that they have an expiration date. They might spoil slowly, but once they turn, the stench is impossible to hide. Their circle is now smelling the decay. They're realizing that what they were fed was never truth, but a performance meant to manipulate their emotions. And because truth requires no explanation while lies require constant defense, the liar is now exhausted, cornered, and exposed. In the end, what they said about you didn't stand the test of time. It aged badly, fell apart, and made them look like the fraud. Their words lost power while your quiet consistency gained weight. And now, the very circle they used to spread the lie is the same one questioning why the story never matched the reality they're seeing. Number 4. Their attack became a mirror for everyone else. Their attack truly became a mirror for everyone else, and that's the moment their circle started waking up. By making you the scapegoat, they didn't just expose their hatred toward you, they exposed their entire pattern of behavior. People are smarter than liars give them credit for. Once the dust settles, their circle begins to connect the dots. They realize that what was done to you wasn't just about you. It was a demonstration of how this person deals with anyone who dares to shine too bright, stand too tall, or go against their control. Suddenly, the attack isn't viewed as an isolated event, but as a preview of what could happen to them if they ever step out of line. This is where fear creeps in. The same people who once cheered for the drama start asking themselves private questions. What happens if I achieve something they don't like? What happens if I say no? Will they turn on me too? That realization doesn't inspire loyalty, it inspires distance. Nobody wants to live under the threat of being the next target, so people begin to pull back. They smile less, they share less, they trust less. They start watching every word, every move, not out of respect, but out of survival. But fear can only hold people together for so long. Once fear replaces trust, relationships decay from the inside. Distance grows, and that distance eventually turns into betrayal. The same people who once believed the lies start whispering behind closed doors, secretly warning each other, secretly planning exits. Because the truth is, no one wants to be close to someone who thrives on scapegoats. Sooner or later, the circle realizes that standing too close to this person is dangerous. If they could sacrifice the innocent for their own agenda, then they won't hesitate to sacrifice anyone else. And that's the real downfall. By attacking you, they revealed the trap they set for themselves. Their circle isn't just turning against them because of what was done to you. It's turning because they've seen their own future if they stay. What was meant to destroy you has become a living warning sign for everyone else. The mirror has spoken and the reflection isn't pretty. Number 5, innocence provokes judgment. Innocence provokes judgment. And that's something many people underestimate until they see it play out. You didn't have to step into a debate, argue your case, or defend yourself because innocence doesn't need a lawyer. It speaks for itself. When someone is pure in spirit and clean in heart, that very purity becomes a weapon they didn't even ask for. It unsettles the guilty. It makes the dishonest feel exposed. It presses on the conscience of anyone who stood by silently or participated in the attack. That's why their circle is now restless. It's not your words that are haunting them, it's the weight of your innocence. The reality is, people can dismiss excuses, they can twist facts, and they can even overlook evidence when it's convenient. But what they can't shake is the presence of purity. A clean soul carries authority without ever opening its mouth. It doesn't matter how loudly the liar shouts or how much they exaggerate their case. Their voice grows weaker in the shadow of truth. Their circle feels this, even if they don't want to admit it. They sense the imbalance, the spiritual wrongness of attacking someone who carries no malice. That awareness stirs division, because some can't live comfortably knowing they co-signed something unjust. And here's the deeper truth. Innocence is not passive. It has a force of its own. It judges without condemning. It reveals without accusing. It simply stands, and in that standing, it unmasks everyone else. Their circle is now left to wrestle with their own conscience, and the weight is heavy. Some feel guilt, some feel shame, and others feel fear, because deep down they know they sided with corruption against a blameless one. That guilt doesn't disappear. It festers until it turns into disunity. This is why you didn't need to defend yourself. Your consistency, your character, your unshaken spirit, all of it has been your defense. And it's more powerful than any counterattack you could have made. Innocence doesn't just clear your name, it shakes theirs. It makes the liar look smaller, weaker, and more desperate, and now their own circle is divided. Not because of anything you did, but because your purity stood tall against their corruption, and forced everyone to see who truly carried the weight of truth. Number 6, loyalty built on hatred always backfires. Loyalty built on hatred always backfires. And that's the exact trap they fell into when they tried to rally their circle against you. Their entire bond wasn't built on respect, trust, or even genuine love. It was built on tearing you down. That kind of unity feels powerful in the moment because nothing bonds people faster than a shared enemy. But the truth is, hatred has no staying power. It's like a fire that burns hot but burns out quickly, leaving only ashes behind. Their circle felt united as long as your name was in their mouths. But the second the obsession with you died down, they were left staring at each other with nothing but suspicion. That's the hidden danger of hate-fueled loyalty. It requires constant feeding. They had to keep inventing new lies, new reasons to despise you, new drama to keep the circle engaged. But hatred is exhausting. Eventually the fuel runs out, and when it does, the same sharp energy they directed at you turns inward. The circle begins snapping at each other, accusing each other, and competing for dominance. The loyalty they once swore by collapses, because it was never real in the first place. It was just borrowed energy from tearing you apart. And here's the brutal truth. Anyone who needs a scapegoat to hold their circle together is already weak. If their bond was strong, they wouldn't have needed you as the glue. The fact that they made you the centerpiece of their unity exposed the cracks in their foundation. Now those cracks are widening. Without you to attack, their insecurities are attacking each other. The envy that once pointed outward is now festering inward, and it's tearing their circle apart from the inside. This is why their plan was doomed from the start. Hatred cannot build anything lasting. It only destroys. What they thought was power was really fragility disguised as strength. The circle is now devouring itself because the glue was never love. It was venom. And venom eventually poisons the hand that holds it. By trying to unite people against you, they guaranteed that the moment you were no longer available as a target, their so-called loyalty would dissolve into chaos. Now they're reaping the consequences of building a bond on something that was never meant to last. Number 7. Their own circle secretly envied you too. Their own circle secretly envied you too, and that's one of the most brutal truths hidden beneath all of this. The lies didn't spread so easily just because the liar was convincing. They spread because the people listening wanted them to be true. It was easier for them to believe the worst about you than to face the uncomfortable reality that you carry something they don't. Envy works quietly like that. It doesn't always show up as open hatred. Sometimes it hides in fake smiles, polite conversations, or even in the silence of people who claim to be neutral. Deep down, though, they were waiting for you to fall, because your very existence reminded them of what they lacked. That's why the lies stuck at first. They gave the circle a reason to look away from their own insecurities. By believing that you weren't as pure, as gifted, or as strong as you appeared, they felt a little more comfortable with themselves. The lie gave them relief, even if temporary, because it lowered you in their minds. And let's be real. Sometimes people don't need proof to believe a story. They just need a reason that feeds their jealousy. You were that reason. But now the mask is slipping. The more time passes, the clearer it becomes that the story doesn't fit the reality. Your consistency is undeniable. Your spirit hasn't matched the accusations, and the fruit of your life doesn't align with the lies they swallowed. That's where the guilt begins to creep in. Not only guilt for siding with the liar, but guilt for secretly wanting those lies to be true in the first place. They're now realizing that they weren't just passive listeners, they were participants, silently rooting for your downfall because of envy. And guilt is a heavy thing. It doesn't just sit quietly, it shifts dynamics. The circle is now turning because they don't want to be reminded of their own jealousy every time they look at the liar. The liar's exposure forces them to face the ugly truth about themselves, and that discomfort is unbearable. So what happens? They redirect the blame. Instead of admitting their envy, they pin everything on the liar who fed it. They turn against the very person who gave them the excuse to indulge in their jealousy, because it's easier than admitting their own weakness. In the end, their envy made them complicit, but the unraveling of the lie has left them exposed. To save face, they're abandoning the liar, not out of loyalty to you, but out of desperation to escape the mirror of guilt staring back at them. Number 8. False testimonies always call for a witness. False testimonies always call for a witness, and that's the very trap the liar walked into. When they spread lies about you, they probably thought their words alone would be enough to convince people. Maybe it worked at first. Some nodded, some whispered, some even ran with the story. But lies are fragile things. They don't stand on their own. Unlike truth, which can simply exist, lies need backup. They need proof. They need validation. They need someone else to stand beside them and say, "Yes, I saw it too." Without that, the story starts to wobble. The irony is that the more they exaggerated their claims, the more their own circle began to lean forward, silently demanding evidence. People may play along for a while, but human nature always searches for receipts. And when no proof shows up, suspicion shifts. It goes from questioning the accused to questioning the accuser. Suddenly, the one pointing the finger looks more desperate than convincing. The louder they spoke, the more obvious the emptiness behind their words became. And that's the dangerous thing about false testimony. It puts the spotlight back on the liar. The moment they can't produce witnesses, their credibility cracks. Their circle begins to notice the inconsistencies. The story doesn't add up, the details change, and the emotion sounds more personal than factual. What once seemed like righteous anger now looks like bitterness. What once looked like exposing truth now looks like exposing themselves. Innocence doesn't need a defense team because reality always reveals it. But lies without evidence begin to rot. And when they do, the accuser doesn't just look mistaken. They look calculated. They look malicious. They look like the one hiding something. And people in their circle start whispering not about you, but about them. If none of this is true, why did they go so far? What's their real motive? That's how false testimony flips. The liar becomes the one on trial. At the end of the day, their attempt to frame you ended up framing themselves. The absence of proof became its own kind of proof. Proof that envy, bitterness, and manipulation were the real motives all along. Their words didn't put you in the spotlight. They put themselves under interrogation, and now their own circle is watching them like a suspect instead of following them like a leader. Number 9. Their reputation became the real casualty. Their reputation became the real casualty, and that's the twist they never saw coming. When they set out to lie on you, their goal was to bury your name under dirt. They wanted people to doubt you, dismiss you, and distance themselves from you. And maybe for a moment it worked. Your name might have carried a bruise, people may have whispered, and some relationships may have shifted. But bruises heal. Innocence has a way of restoring itself. What doesn't heal as easily is reputation once it's tied to dishonesty. The very shovel they tried to use against you ended up digging their own grave. That's the difference between a temporary bruise and a permanent stain. People who heard the lies might have questioned you for a season, but when the dust settled, they also questioned the one who started it all. Over time, patterns reveal themselves, and once people see a liar in action, that identity sticks. Because here's the hard truth. People don't remember lies because of the details. They remember them because of what they reveal about character. No one says, "Oh, I recall the exact words they used." Instead, they say, "That's the one who lies. That's the one who twists stories. That's the one I can't trust." That impression is hard to erase, and it lingers far longer than any false rumor about you ever could. The irony is that they thought they were protecting their own image by destroying yours. But every lie they told actually chipped away at their own credibility. Every time the story shifted, every time proof was missing, every time bitterness bled through their voice, their reputation weakened. And now their circle sees them differently. They may not admit it out loud, but the respect is gone. People nod less, trust less, and secretly distance themselves, because nobody wants to be tied to someone known for deception. So while they set out to bury you, they buried themselves instead. Your name is regaining strength because truth has endurance, but theirs is stained permanently. The circle will never forget that they were willing to invent, twist, and manipulate to take you down. In the end, it wasn't your character that collapsed under the weight of lies, it was theirs. Their reputation is the true casualty, and it's a wound they'll never fully recover from. Number 10. The circle is seeing the pattern. The circle is seeing the pattern, and that's where everything begins to unravel for them. This wasn't the first time they lied. It was just the first time the lie was so blatant, so messy, and so impossible to cover up that it forced people to start paying attention. Their circle had ignored the signs before. Maybe they brushed it off as gossip. Maybe they thought it was harmless exaggeration. Or maybe they chose not to look too closely because it wasn't affecting them directly. But now, with this latest attack on you, the mask slipped too far, and their people can't unsee what they've seen. Once people notice a pattern, it's game over for trust. Their circle is replaying past situations in their minds and realizing the similarities. The recycled narratives, the constant exaggerations, the emotional manipulation, it all starts connecting like puzzle pieces. Suddenly, things that didn't make sense before make perfect sense now. That falling out with someone else wasn't because the other person was toxic. It was because the liar has a habit of demonizing anyone who won't play along. That dramatic story about betrayal now looks less like fact and more like fiction. Their entire history is being reread under a new light, and the picture isn't flattering. This is why loyalty breaks so suddenly in situations like this. It's not always the lie itself that destroys the bond. It's the realization that it wasn't a one-time slip, but a repeated behavior. People can forgive a mistake, but they don't forgive a pattern. A mistake says human. A pattern says character. And once people believe they've seen someone's true character, loyalty dissolves permanently. No matter how many times the liar tries to explain themselves, the doubt has already taken root. The scariest part for them is that the circle no longer sees them as credible. Every future word will be weighed against the knowledge of their past behavior. Even if they tell the truth, it will be met with suspicion. That's what happens when a pattern is exposed. Trust doesn't just weaken, it collapses. Their circle may still smile to their face, but the loyalty is fractured beyond repair. The bond is broken because once someone proves they are willing to lie consistently, no one wants to risk being the next victim. Number 11. They weaponized their voice, now it's muted. They weaponized their voice, and now it's muted. What they thought was power, the ability to sway opinions, control narratives, and dominate conversations, turned out to be their undoing. Their voice, instead of building credibility or respect, became a weapon aimed at anyone who didn't serve their agenda. Every word they spoke was a calculated strike, meant to manipulate, intimidate, or discredit. At first, it seemed effective. People listened, feared, or followed along. But over time, the circle began to notice the pattern. They realized this wasn't leadership, guidance, or insight. It was aggression disguised as authority. When a voice is weaponized, it doesn't just target the intended victim, it creates fear and discomfort for everyone around. Their own circle started paying attention to how words were used, who was being torn down next, and how easily influence could turn into threat. They saw that loyalty wasn't demanded through truth or respect. It was coerced through intimidation and manipulation. That's when unease sets in. People don't like to align with someone whose primary method of influence is to strike first and explain later. Nobody wants to be near a weapon, especially one that could turn on them without warning. Paranoia begins to replace loyalty. The same circle that once nodded or repeated the liar's narrative now steps back, cautious and suspicious. Conversations become measured. Smiles become guarded. Allies become observers, quietly recalculating their proximity. The energy that once gave the liar authority now isolates them. What was supposed to show dominance only highlighted instability and danger. And here's the kicker. Once a voice loses credibility, it's almost impossible to regain. The weaponization is remembered longer than the message. People remember the fear more than the argument. Every future word, no matter how honest, is filtered through the memory of what was once a tool of attack. Their circle doesn't just doubt them, they avoid them. Influence becomes irrelevant when everyone around you is waiting for the next strike. In the end, the very thing they thought gave them power, control over the narrative through their voice, backfired. By weaponizing words against you, they revealed their instability to the people they wanted on their side. Now, that voice that once commanded attention is muted by the walls they built between themselves and their own circle. Isolation becomes the natural consequence of turning influence into a weapon. Number 12. Their circle is paying the price too. Their circle is paying the price too. And that's the hidden cost of siding with someone who lies. When people choose to follow, support, or repeat falsehoods, they don't escape unscathed. They become part of the story themselves. Every whisper, every nod, every agreement makes them a participant in the deception. The liar isn't just dragging themselves down. They're dragging everyone who enabled them along for the ride. And when the truth starts surfacing, the weight of that complicity becomes impossible to ignore. The guilt is subtle at first, like a shadow at the edge of their conscience. They notice how their words contributed to harm, how their silence allowed manipulation to thrive, and how their approval empowered someone who was actively attacking the innocent. It doesn't matter if they weren't the one lying. By co-signing the lie, they're implicated. That's why their circle starts feeling restless, uneasy, and divided. There's an invisible pressure pushing them to reevaluate their alliances, because nobody wants to be stuck carrying the burden of someone else's wrongdoing. The shame grows louder with every passing day. Their circle begins to see the liar for what they truly are, not the carefully constructed image they projected. Every fabricated story, every exaggeration, every act of cruelty becomes a reflection on those who chose to stand beside them. It's uncomfortable to watch, and it's even more uncomfortable to realize how easily they allowed themselves to be complicit. That discomfort sparks self-preservation. They start distancing themselves, making excuses, and quietly stepping back, because staying close threatens to stain their own integrity. The realization is unavoidable. Separation is the quickest route to freedom. By breaking away, they can reclaim their own credibility and remove themselves from the weight of someone else's lies. The liar loses not just their target, but their supporters, because nobody wants to remain a participant in corruption when the truth is finally revealed. Their circle discovers that loyalty built on deception isn't loyalty at all. It's liability. In the end, the liar's downfall isn't solitary. The people who enabled them feel the consequences too. Their guilt, shame, and discomfort force them to make a choice. Continue carrying the burden of complicity or step away and preserve themselves. Most choose the latter, and that's why the circle that once empowered them is now turning its back. The cost of following a liar is never just the liars alone. It spreads like poison, touching everyone who got too close. Number 13. Truth has no expiration date. Truth has no expiration date, and that's the ultimate reason the liar's circle is starting to distance themselves. No matter how elaborate their stories were, no matter how much energy they poured into twisting reality, the truth doesn't disappear, it waits. Lies are temporary, fragile, and eventually show cracks. They rot, decay, and become increasingly obvious over time. Truth, on the other hand, doesn't rush. It ripens, becomes undeniable, and only grows stronger with every passing moment. What they tried to hide can't be hidden forever, and that inevitability is what makes their panic and desperation so visible. Over the years, your consistency, your integrity, and your actions have been quietly proving what they denied. Every time they manufactured drama or exaggerated a story, the truth continued to exist in the background, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself fully. And now, as the liar's circle watches, they can see the stark contrast. Your innocence hasn't aged, it's matured, polished, and more evident than ever. Meanwhile, their accusations have become brittle, disgusting, and self-evidently false. People instinctively notice that difference, and that instinct is stronger than any fabricated narrative. This is why loyalty built on lies cannot survive the test of time. The circle begins to observe without needing proof beyond what their eyes are already telling them. They notice the decay of dishonesty and the durability of truth. The tension grows unbearable. They realize that continuing to side with the liar doesn't just make them look foolish, it threatens their own reputation and credibility. Being associated with someone whose lies are visibly rotting is dangerous. In the face of this contrast, abandoning the liar becomes the only logical option. It's not about siding with you, it's about self-preservation. Their decision isn't moral, It's survival instinct. By stepping back, they distance themselves from the inevitable collapse, from the shame of being connected to someone whose falsehoods are exposed for all to see. In the end, truth doesn't need defense. Time is its ally, and patience is its weapon. Lies, no matter how forceful or loud, eventually fade under its weight. Their circle is leaving the liar not because of you directly, but because the truth about you has aged beautifully, while everything they built on deceit has aged terribly. That contrast is undeniable, and it forces even the closest allies to reconsider their position. The liar is losing power simply because the truth doesn't expire and everyone can see it. Number 14. They mistook the crowd for power, but the crowd is turning witness. They mistook the crowd for power, but the crowd is turning witness, and that's where the liar's illusion completely collapses. At first, having people repeat their story, nod at their exaggerations, and echo their accusations felt like strength. Numbers always look impressive on the surface, and the liar relied on that visible support to feel untouchable. They assumed that if enough people believed or repeated their lies, the lie itself would become untouchable. But influence built on fear, manipulation, or deception is never real power. It's temporary applause. Now, those same people who once amplified the lies are seeing the truth. The circle that once nodded in agreement, laughed at the gossip, or added fuel to the fire, is witnessing the collapse firsthand. Every inconsistency, every exaggeration, every missing piece of evidence is being noticed. Their eyes are opening, their whispers are changing, and the very crowd that once boosted the liar is now quietly observing, cataloging, and judging. What was once an audience for deception is now a jury evaluating credibility, integrity, and character. That shift is deadly for the liar because a crowd can either protect or condemn you depending on what they witness. Once they start questioning, comparing, and analyzing, loyalty built on illusion falls apart quickly. People begin sharing their observations with each other, connecting dots, and seeing the same pattern you already exposed. They aren't just stepping back, they're mentally testifying against the liar, recounting incidents, noting inconsistencies, and quietly siding with truth. Every murmured doubt, every side glance, every private conversation adds weight against the liar. The irony is ruthless. The power they thought they held over others was an illusion, and the people they used as shields have become weapons against them. The crowd that once seemed like protection now amplifies the consequences of every lie told. It's no longer about defending themselves, it's about self-preservation and distancing from someone whose deceit is too glaring to ignore. In the end, numbers alone never equal authority. Influence isn't measured by how many follow you, it's measured by respect and truth. Their circle isn't just abandoning them, they're actively witnessing, judging, and testifying against them. The applause has turned into scrutiny, and the protective audience has transformed into the jury that ensures their exposure. The liar's illusion of power is crumbling under the weight of observation, and there's no recovery once the witnesses start speaking in their silence. The story of lies, envy, and attempted destruction has a simple, unshakable truth. The universe always exposes what is real. Every lie told about you, every attempt to smear your name, every manipulation meant to control perception has not only failed, it has backfired spectacularly. The people who once rallied around the liar are now seeing the truth in crystal clarity. They are witnesses, judges, and even participants in their own unraveling. Their circle, once seemingly loyal, has fractured under the weight of dishonesty, guilt, and fear. Every action they took against you has revealed more about themselves than it ever did about you.